Three industries wiped out for good by the coronavirus. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, that's the catchy headline, although I paraphrased it, on the top of a Forbes story written by one Stephen McBride, who is the editor of their Risk Hedge report. And he lists these three industries and basically said that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, that these industries are essentially wiped out for good. It doesn't mean necessarily that they won't exist, but they won't exist as we know them. And if you don't mind, I'd like to take them one at a time and get your reflections on how you think people will cope with a post-pandemic world, regarding these industries, and whether you agree with Stephen McBride's assessment that essentially these folks are toast. Number one is one close to your heart, or at least close to your house, and that is movie theaters. In the film industry, apparently, Universal Pictures did something that really shocked the industry because of this whole safer at home thing. They released Trolls 2, a sequel to the Trolls movie, and they released it online first. It was supposed to be a blockbuster theater movie, but they put it out online, and families can stream it for $20. And Disney is going to do the same thing with another one of their upcoming hits. And basically, this guy's saying that the real advantage that movie theaters had was an exclusive agreement with the distributors or the production companies to air the movies in the theaters before they could be released this way. And Universal has said that after the lockdown's over, they're not going to do that anymore. Do you think movie theaters will persist at a time when even before we shut down, theater going was at a low that hadn't been seen since the 1920s?
Well, first of all, I don't think movie theaters are going to go away. Going to the movies is an event, and they've been talking about it being a done deal and toast since television started to hit its stride in the late 50s. So that's more than that. 60, 70 years have been saying it's the end of movie theaters. It is true that movie attendance is going down. It's true that people go to fewer movies. And I don't doubt the numbers that fewer people were going and going and going. One of that reasons for that is so much that Hollywood has alienated basically the entire middle and the bottom of the market politically. The only thing that keeps Hollywood afloat in terms of box office externally going out to the movies are the summer tent poles, and those are communal experiences. It's just not the same. If you're a Star Wars fan, but there aren't any anymore. But a big Marvel movie, for example, watching that at home is not the same event. Going out on a date to a movie is still the thing, you know. To the degree that I don't think the COVID-19, let me put it this way, I don't think the COVID-19 is going to have a permanent effect on the movie theaters. I think they're going to follow the same trend lines they have been following. Those lines were trending down. But to say that this is the end of going out to the movies, I think he's wrong on that one.
Well, he's not saying it's the end of going out to the movies, but he's specifically targeting, he's not just saying that people don't want to be in close proximity to each other as a result of this. He said, as a result of the pandemic, the Trolls movie got released, and that Universal is now saying that they're not going to give this exclusive status to theaters. And he thinks that's really a death sentence for theaters as a big industry, and that millions of people will choose to watch new movies at home, with the possible exception of these tentpole films that you're describing.
Well, maybe Universal will do that and maybe not. I mean, right now, they get to milk the cow twice. Any major movie that comes out, they get the box office from the movie in the theaters, and then they get a second pass at it, usually, 2-3 months later, when it's released for Netflix or iTunes or, whatever the case may be. People who saw the movie in the theater will often buy the movie, watch it a second time. You often get to go watch a second time of a movie that you saw in the theater that maybe happened a couple years ago or something like that. I don't see any reason why they would give up being able to milk the same cow for 2 or 3 times. Universal may be saying, wow, the movie did really well. But let's not forget that if Universal is so over the moon about the numbers that Trolls 2 did, and it did so well at home, might behoove Universal to remember that everybody was at home because they were ordered to be at home. You know, I don't know if that metric is exactly going to stand in a post-lockdown world.
Well, and as you know and pointed out, that most of the theaters have been having a really tough time in recent years anyway. AMC, major theater chain, entered into bankruptcy discussions earlier this week, and its competitors and AMC have all been down pretty significantly over the last couple of years. Let's move on to the next category, because I think that this one is something that's hard to imagine, especially for people of our generation. But number 2 on the blacklisted industry list from Stephen McBride at Forbes is department stores. Macy's has crashed 60% since January. There are bankruptcy talks going on, or potential retailers going bankrupt include Macy's, The Gap, Nordstrom, Kohl's, Bed Bath & Beyond, Foot Locker, and others. And he said that to a large degree, people have been increasingly shopping online, but in-store sales have been going up as well. However, when this happened and everybody was stuck inside, a lot of people who wouldn't have ordinarily shopped online did so to a much greater degree and said, hey, why haven't we been doing this all along?
Again, I think it's got... there's no question that department stores in the traditional sense, the department stores that we grew up with, places like Sears and Penny's and things like that, where you would go to one place and they'd have all these different departments. They'd have clothes, they'd have hardware, they'd have toys, they'd have all of that stuff. No question, those things are done, and they've been cooked for decades now. The old department store chains like Sears have been just on life support for at least 10 years, if more like 20 probably. I don't know if I would call Sports Center or, I'm sorry, was it Sports?
Foot Locker?
Sorry. I don't know if I'd call Foot Locker or Bed Bath & Beyond a department store in the way that I tend to think of a department store.
Yeah, and he kind of grouped those together at the end, just saying retailers in general are having a hard time.
Well, they may be having a hard time, but there is always something to be said for shopping, which has never appealed to me very much, but it does appeal to some people. And shopping is like going to the movies, is a communal experience. I think the idea that somehow, if we'd been locked down for 5 years and we'd gone into the underground, nuclear vaults for the big blast, and we crack open the hatch, and we haven't been up above on the surface in 5 years, and there's nothing but glowing wasteland out there, I think you'd have a stronger case for some of these things. But the idea that 2 months of lockdown is going to cause people to want to not shop anymore or not go out to a movie anymore just seems like a little bit too clever by half. I think what he's doing is he's taking what are clear trend lines that existed well before this pandemic and saying that the pandemic may be accelerating those trends. I don't know. You are going to find there is a bottom to this stuff. There is, people are always going to want to go shopping, and people are going to want to try things on. And you can't try things on online. Even if they had a piece of software that would show you what it looked like, it's not the same thing. So again, to the degree
there are companies, frankly, Bill, that have dealt with this. It's funny because, Warby Parker does this thing where it's an eyeglass company, and they say they'll send you 5 pairs and you pick out the ones you want and send the rest back. It's a little easier to do with eyeglasses, but I remember years ago, and I'm talking almost 25, 30 years ago, a lady I knew would order 5 dresses from the Spiegel catalog, and they would deliver 5 dresses. She'd try them on in the privacy of her own home because she hated going to the store and having to use their dressing rooms and deal with that whole rigmarole. And she'd try on 5 dresses, keep one, and mail the other 4 back.
I can't speak for Nora Desmond specifically, but the whole idea of not leaving the house, and I mean, that seems to me like an extreme kind of case, Scott. What I think in the case of both of these things, I think what you are seeing is that since the market is shrinking, the people out there who are going to survive are going to be the more upscale people. AMC may be filing for bankruptcy. I don't know how ArcLight is doing. ArcLight is one of those places where you reserve your seats, and and it's a little more upscale, I guess. And And there's, I think people will always have a desire to go out to the movies, and I think people will always have a desire to go out and go shopping. They're both communal experiences. And to say that, wow, we haven't had any communal experiences for 2 months, therefore it's bred out of the human body, I think is a reach too far.
I wonder whether there might be an opening market, especially in that kind of business like department stores, and you mentioned clothing, for the more high-touch kind of retailers that are not department stores necessarily. I remember I was editor of a business journal in central Pennsylvania when Wal-Mart first started moving into that area of the country. And I went around and I interviewed small businesses that might be affected by Wal-Mart to find out what the reaction was of these small retailers. And some of them were panicked, but a lot of them basically said, look, as long as you're not doing what Walmart does, Walmart's not going to beat you. And if you're running a hardware store that has no service, well, yeah, the Walmart's going to clean your clock. But if you've really focused on developing a relationship with your customers or selling specialty items or whatever. So I'm wondering if maybe the department stores are kind of a thing of the past, but people will be going in to get the consulting and the personal touch that they can get from stores that really can devote that kind of personal attention.
Well, you work in a retail outlet that has large objects that people want to experience before they buy them. Scott sells elephants online. If you didn't know that, he's got a little not online, really little place out back of his trailer home, and
we're really cleaning up. I'll tell you,
sells Indian elephants
in the elephant business. There's a lot of cleaning up.
Yeah. But again, that is going down there and trying to experience things. The thing that killed department stores were shopping malls. A shopping mall is the department store now. Instead of going to Sears, you go to the mall, and in the mall there are all these specialty shops, and because they're specialty shops, they produce nicer stuff. You know, they go to You
but Sears is the anchor for the mall. Sears is Sears and anchor. Macy's and J.C. Penney's. You know?
They're the anchors for the mall in 1973. They have not been anchors for malls in forever. One of the last surviving department stores, which is really now just a clothing store.
You're saying the mall is the
honestly.
anchor for Sears.
I'm saying there are no Sears anymore. If you've got a mall that's got a Sears in it, that's a dead mall. Period. Macy's is about the only large chain left that I can think of that still has any kind of allure to it.
And they look to be headed for bankruptcy.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think the malls are going to go. I just don't see people not shopping. Now, please, for God's sakes, please don't tell me the third one is going to be whalebone corsets, because I've got a ton of money sunk into that. And my portfolio has taken a whipping ever since I lost the opportunity to open up my nationwide Bat Taco franchise.
After all the eating and lethargic behavior I've engaged in the last month or so staying at home, I could use some whalebone corsets. This is the final one, Bill, on this list. And again, this is from Forbes, from a writer named Stephen McBride. He's saying this one seems like a little more obscure, but I think it's more substantial for a lot of people. Office space operators. Companies that buy up buildings and rent out office space. He's saying it's not that offices will be totally empty, but the number of folks working from home is going to surge. And when 30% of your office is empty every day, CEOs are going to start looking at cutting rents.
Now, that one I agree with. I had a strong feeling that telecommuting was something that any number of people have heard about, talked about, and maybe had to do like on a sick day or something. But I had a very strong feeling that if you basically take the entire nation and make them work from home, a number of people are going to like that. And not just employees, employers are going to like that as well. So yes, obviously, needless to say, you still need offices for many services. But as you pointed out, you may not need nearly as much office space. You may be able to have a significant portion of your staff work from home either every day or every other day or whatever the case may be. And office space, I don't know much about the real estate markets, but I know that in places like China, for example, in Shanghai, there are entire skyscrapers that, they have the first 10 floors filled and the top 90 are vacant. There's nobody there. So it seems to me like that there's been a pretty big overbuilding of office space going into this thing. But this one, I think he's got a better case on than the other two. And not because of I'm not trying to say that people are not going to go to work. Going to work, like going to the movies and going shopping, are things that we do communally, and you can't really take that away. But I do think that this one, unlike the other two, which were trending downward anyway, I do think that the virus will have an effect on the commercial real estate market, that it will have an impact going forward into the future, because I think, like I said, both employers and employees may like the idea of working from home a lot better. So that one I'm going to give them some credit for.
I had a customer in my store today who was a young professional woman. I asked her what she did for a living, and it turns out that she is a salesperson, and she sells enterprise grade data analysis software. Okay, so I thought
you were going to say enterprise grade elephant saddles.
But anyway, so she's selling this data analysis software, enterprise grade stuff, which means, and in fact, she mentioned Macy's being a big customer of the firm, oddly enough, as we've just mentioned Macy's. And so she was in there, she wanted to buy a kind of a sofa. And at one point in the conversation, she said, I'm not sure I can go with this model because, this isn't just my sofa, this is my office. I do this from home all the time. And I don't know if she's always done it from home or she just now does it from home, but I'm thinking, this woman is selling to like big corporations, like a Macy's kind of level corporation, very intense, high-tech product. And she's doing it from the sofa that she's going to buy from me, not some swanky corner office in a shiny tower building,
Yes. And this is why capitalism is both so cruel and so kind as well. In a free market system, the money does the talking, and if something isn't working, then by propping it up, all you do is extend the pain, not just for the people that are pouring money into something that's not going to succeed anymore, but also for the people who are working there. This kind of creative destruction is what makes capitalism so effective, and also makes it so desirable in a way. I mean, you could have subsidized, stick and hoop manufacturers for children toys, but you'd be paying people not to do anything, and those people would be better employed doing something else. And I know it sounds very heartless to say that some businesses are on the way out, but they've always been on the way out. And I think that the only thing that's really terrible is when you find these societies where you basically pay people to go in and not do anything. As a person who has spent a fair amount of my life, at least my earlier life, goofing off quite a bit, there's nothing more difficult than trying to look busy. It is exhausting. I'd much rather be working than trying to look like I was working. And so, the whole society, the whole world is changing. I personally think if you step way back, I mentioned this at the beginning of this outbreak too. We are in a time of enormous change. It's got nothing to do with politics or wars or pandemics or anything. The transition from the industrial era to the information age has been a fairly painless one by human standards, but nevertheless, it results in a lot of displacement. And I think for the United States, the worst of that is behind us. I think it was the loss of the manufacturing jobs starting in the late 70s through the 80s and 90s. And so that was just brutal. But most of that has already happened. And I think that since the three things that we're talking about, the entertainment aspect, the shopping aspect, and then the working aspect, all three of those enable us to do them from home in the information age in a way that they didn't in the industrial era when you had so much fewer choices. This this is nothing but good for us. Decentralization is a conservative thing. Moving out of cities is a conservative thing. Just don't move to Texas, please. Don't.
It's too late. Everybody's already done it, or is doing it.
Did you see the Babylon Bee, the Babylon Bee article that said that Texans are planting "Welcome to Texas" signs all along the borders of Oklahoma, so that the Californians will move there.
Sooner the better.
Yeah, but all of the things that we grew up with, because people of approximately our age, watching the tail end, but the most dramatic end of this gigantic transition has been going on since probably the late 70s. We are moving more and more and more towards a gig-based economy, and that means that stuff that was just inconceivable for my dad. Inconceivable that he might have to have 3 or 4 different things that he did for money, none of which paid the bills altogether, but taken in aggregate, that's how it works. It's inconceivable for him. But it's an adjustment that I had to make. And I went from working at a television studio now to working on the internet. And I was used to it, because there is no steady work in the entertainment business. More and more people are facing this. The good news is that young people are it just never occurs to them. They never, ever, ever really, I don't think, plan to go and work in the same office for 50 years and get their gold watch, start in the newsroom, retire as the vice president in the corner office. Here's your gold watch, go home, retire, and have your heart attack in 3 years. The world is changing, and I think generally speaking for the better. But I think he's wrong about at least 2 of those 3. And I think he's certainly wrong if he's saying that all 3 of these things, going together to entertainment, like the movies, shopping for things that you can put your hands on, touch, and not buy, and actually going to work and having colleagues. If what he's trying to say is that all 3 of these things have been doomed by the pandemic, I think he's dead wrong on all 3 counts.
Well, and you're generalizing the topics. He specified them. He's saying it's specifically movie theaters, specifically department stores, and then specifically office space operators. So not general entertainment, not general shopping. So he's just saying
wrong on. I think he's wrong on all 3.
Well, we shall see. Ladies and
the
gentlemen,
reason I know this is because I do not have a degree in economics, and therefore
right.
I have at least a 50-50 chance of being right on any one of these 3 things.
Not having a degree in economics radically increases your chances of being correct when you make an economic prediction.
In fact, I've got a 12.5% chance of being right on all 3 if I did my math correctly, just randomly.
And you'll get no challenge on math from me. Ladies and gentlemen, we're glad you took an opportunity to watch this program. It could not exist without our friends who are the members at BillWhittle.com. If you're not a member yet, go to that website and click the big green button that says Become a Member and find out what you're missing. There are areas of that website that you will not see until you become a member. And largely, those are the areas where you get an opportunity to interact with other liberty lovers, fellow conservatives, constitutionalists, and frankly, fun people. So you're going to enjoy doing that. You can start off by just subscribing essentially for a month. And if you hate it, get lost. We'll refund your money. That's okay with us. But I don't think you're going to hate it. I think you're going to like it and stick around. So go to BillWhittle.com, click the Become a Member button. And for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.